Thank you so much for having me and for being here tonight. Um, your your reading and your thoughts after Happy Life were very um, consistent with another page we read in Happy Life earlier this month, my wife and I. So about enthusiasm, and it speaks to no matter what you face, be enthusiastic, right? So trying to talk to our teenage daughters about that and applying it every day. Your passage made me think of that today.
Napoleon Hill used to say that be enthusiastic and you see that you're gonna contaminate everybody.
Yeah, but he got it from the Spirits book, man.
Of course.
No, just kidding. Nothing is
It did, right?
exactly right. And our topic tonight, and you talked about from the heart, right, and being the real deal, right. Well, tonight's going to be hard for me because I don't. It's hard to. This topic is awesome for your brain and for a rational way to understand the concept. I may miss your hearts tonight. I'm going to try, but this is more of a. To me, this is more science tonight than good news. But it is good information. So a silly question, but in the Spiritist Center, right? I'm sure if I ask how many of you believe in reincarnation, everybody's going to raise their hand, right? But out there in the world, right? And I should have looked up current data, but I'm sure it's a large number. I don't know if it's 50-50 or not, but there's a lot of people that don't believe in reincarnation. And tonight reminded me of conversations, will remind me as I was preparing for this, of conversations I've had with people that don't believe. And they want to know why I believe, right? So maybe this will help you with some of those conversations. I can take no credit for what I'm going to talk about tonight. This is all from, it's actually in the version of the Spirits book I have, the edition that I have is chapter 5 in book 2, right? Or what Livia calls chapter 9 from her book. But it's really one question, right? It's a lot of pages on question 222, which starts off basically with a conversation, right, about the topic, and that's what we're going to start with tonight. Is jumping into that. But just out of curiosity, how many of you do believe in reincarnation? I'm just kidding. Everybody in the room, right? All right. So, what this question, what the spirits share here right away, is when I discovered or was introduced to Spiritism. It was brand new. It was novel. I'd never heard of it, even though everything that was being described to me by Christiane, my wife now, but a woman that I would have believed anything she told me at the time because I wanted her to call me again, right? But I wasn't faking it. I wasn't lying. Right? I mean, everything she was telling me about Spiritism, oh, I must be a Spiritist, right? I believe this. But I'd never seen it in one book, in one area, right? So in my mind, it was very easy to quickly say, well, Spiritism must have invented reincarnation or whatever, right? And I didn't say that, but I could see the leap being made. But what they point out very quickly is that Spiritists never claimed that, you know what's happening, guys? I cannot see on this screen, so I'm doing it again. What do I have to do, Peter? Close some of them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I just lost it. Sorry, guys.
If there's any other PowerPoint open, just close.
That's the problem. There's like 4 of them open. So I'm closing them all right now. Lectures, where are you? Here we go. This should work. My apologies, guys. Here we go. All right. So, where was I? So, what they're very quick to point out is that Spiritists never claimed that Spiritism was a modern invention, right? When this book was written or psychographed and penned, right, by Allan Kardec, at the time there were accusations that Spiritism had just reinvented Pythagoras's reincarnation teachings, right? That's what they were accused of. But what they remind us in these early pages of this question 222 was he didn't invent it either, right? He borrowed it from Indian and Egyptian philosophers. Essentially, soul transmigration or reincarnation at the time, right, was a widespread belief in the earliest chronicles of time. So it goes way back, right, to the earliest writings on caves, if you will, right? It's not a new concept now. It wasn't a new concept 160 years ago when Spiritism started, and it wasn't new with Pythagoras. This is since the beginning of time, right? Philosophies have shared this belief. So they want to point that out. Spiritism didn't invent it and never claimed to. What they talk about and spend a decent amount of time on in these pages is whether it's a revelation or intuition, and they don't really define it. And frankly, they say, does it really matter, right? What they point out is the fact that reincarnation or soul transmigration has been around since the beginning of time, carried over from culture to culture, philosophy to philosophy. That should really be considered a positive in the argument about reincarnation. It not an objection. It's one of those truths that have just been around since the beginning. And does it really matter the chicken or the egg, right? It is, and it's been, and it always will be. Was what I took away from that page. And essentially they asked the question, right? Look, either reincarnation exists or it doesn't, right? And if it does not exist, right, that means then each one of us, every soul created, right, only has one physical life, one corporeal life, and that each one of our souls is created at the same time as our body, all right? No soul and then a body and then the same soul in another body, just one life, one soul created at the same time or just before or right around the same time as the physical body that's coming out of the womb, right? And if that's the case, if we're going to consider that possibility, that theory, there's 6 questions, right? I said 5, it's 6, sorry. gotta get both hands up here, right? There's 6 questions that we have to consider. And that's what they did next. They went through question by question, right? Question number 1 that they asked is, why do souls have such diverse aptitudes, independent of the ideas acquired by education? So I'll ask you, what's the answer to that if you don't believe in reincarnation? Is there such? What can we blame it on or attribute it to? Genetics, right? Physical characteristics, I guess environment to some degree. Right, but if reincarnation didn't exist, why are there so many different aptitudes independent of the ideas acquired by education? That's a good question, right? If you don't believe, how do you answer that? Question number 2, they say that we have to consider is, from where does the special aptitude for certain arts and sciences exhibited by many children at a very young age originate, while others remain inferior or mediocre for their entire lives? Right? Another great question, right? How would we explain that without reincarnation or the progression of the soul? Question number 3, they say we need to consider is, from where do some individuals derive the innate or intuitive ideas that others lack? Again, we could go back to genetics, physical characteristics, right? Question 4, they say we need to ponder is, from where do some children derive an instinctual gravitation towards vice or virtue, or innate senses of dignity or wrongdoing, which often contrasts with the circumstances into which they were born? Great example in the house I grew up with, right? There's 4 of us, right? Same parents, same upbringing, same morals in the house, same, yeah. But there's definitely a huge attraction in one of us towards certain vice compared to the rest. There's definitely an attraction to higher moral ground at an early age from one of us than the rest of us. And I'm not going to tell you which one I am. All right, I'll let you use your imagination. But I didn't necessarily have angel wings on my back when I was younger. The horns I filed down. They're hard to see. But my family's a perfect example. Your family's probably a perfect example, right? Same bloodline, same environment, same everything, right? Same school, and yet totally different. How do you explain that? If it's genetics, if it's physical, if it's that, right? Great question. Question 5. Why is it that some people, independent of education, are more advanced than others? Right? And regardless of education, even, how come some people just seem super smart at a young age, right? And others don't, right? Or the choices that they make, right? I have, unrelated to this question, maybe more to the previous question. I have 3 daughters, as you guys know, and I won't give you names because they may watch this one day, right? They don't need to know who I'm talking about. But 2 of my daughters are twins, and if somebody were to come up to me and say that so and so somebody did so and so to one of my girls, right? Well, depending on which one you told me, 2 things would pop in my head. The first one is, where is he? I'm going to do something about it. There's no way she deserved that, right? No, I'm adding, what do they call, yeah, I'm being embellishing. I don't think I'd be crazy like that, but maybe I would, depending on what the person did. If it was the other one, don't get me wrong, I'd still want to protect her and go after this, but the first thing I would say is, what'd she do? All right, because they're twins, but they're different, right? And I know them now for 12 years, and that's, I'm being funny, but I'm being honest to a certain degree, because same environment, same parents, same school, same classroom most of the time, same hobbies, right? And yet 2 totally different reactions. And how do we explain that without reincarnation? All right, question 6, the last one they say we need to ponder about this is, why is it that some human beings are savages and others are civilized? And this is different context today than it was 160 years ago, whenever it was written. Savages and civilized, in other words, refined, cultured, or primitive, if you will. Not so much savages as in killing and slaying people, but just cultured and city educated versus rural is how I took this, or living in the sticks, or Aborigine type, or a native, if you will. But I didn't really get a clear definition. What's that?
Valid. There's still a lot of people that fight wars and stuff.
Got it. So those are the 6 questions, and the question they come back to after talking about these 6 that we should ask if we don't believe in reincarnation is, what philosophy resolves all of these questions, right? Either the souls of human beings are equal, right, at birth, or they're not. In other words, if we only have one life and one spirit, one life, and everything's done when that's over, or there's some other type of eternal life, something that happens to the soul. But if it's the soul is truly created for that one life, then they have to be equal, right? If they are equal, then why are there so many different aptitudes? How could we consider this strictly physical attributes, as we've talked about? It's just impossible. If we were to consider this scenario and attribute it to physical attributes, then the assumption here, or the question becomes, well, are we humans just machines, right? Just not anything more than that, right? So if so, they say, right, people would not be responsible for their own actions. That makes sense, right? I mean, how many times did I ask that growing up as a kid? Mom, that's not fair, right? How come they have this and I have that? Or how come I didn't get accepted into that scholarship and they did, right? How often do we ask those questions, right? And if we only have that one life and it's all programmed, how would we not be responsible? We wouldn't be responsible for our own actions, right? They could have the right to place all the blame for their wrongdoings on the imperfections of their physical structure. It's like an easy out, right? It kind of sounds like easier that way, right? But the point is, it's not, right? If not created equal, right? They go on to say, after those 6 questions, if the souls aren't created equal, but we only have that one life, right? Then God must have created them this way, right? Why in his inherent superiority, they say, would he grant these inequalities? Why would some people have more, some people have less, some people have sickness, some people have health, some people die before they're one, some people just encounter more suffering. Where's the fairness in this, right? And they go on to say, well, that's definitely going to be partially, would such partiality be consistent with God's justice and the equal love God gives to all creatures, which is pretty much a universal concept in a lot of philosophies, right? That God's a loving Father, loves us all equally, wishes us all the same, right? But if, in fact, we only have one life and there's all this inequality, where is that fairness? Where is that equal love for all of God's creatures? Make sense so far? Awesome. So they go on to say that if we admit the existence of multiple lives, all those inequalities, right, are now fair. It all makes sense. Think about it, right? Here we are. What are there, 25 people in the room maybe, right? Different ages, different experiences, different backgrounds. The one common belief that we have is commonality is we're in a spiritist center, but we're all different, all in different stages of our development, right? Because we believe in multiple lives, it's so easy to understand why Peter's so good looking and I'm not, right? We have to experience these different things, right? Right? So easy. Why is it easy for me to stand up here and talk, right? And for others, they have stage fright? Why some of us have got perfect health and fitness and others have adversity in their health, right? Not because God gave me more or you less or vice versa, but because of that transmigration of the soul. This body is the only body I have in this lifetime. But the soul that's attached, right? The initial creation of God, right? Simple and lacking knowledge many lifetimes ago is identical, right? To your soul that was created many lifetimes ago. Simple and lacking knowledge. But wherever I am in the number of lives that I've lived and the experiences I've gained and the character I've developed or not developed, the morals I have or that I don't have, don't just suddenly start from scratch or get better when this body passes. I come back, right, after some re-education, if you will, right? Pretty much where I left off, morally and character-wise, right? And here I am working on atonement and growth, just like each one of you. So we're all in the same boat, all in different stages. And it makes all of those 6 questions easy to answer. It's easy, right? And it's rational when we believe that the soul never dies. Just the body perishes and we progress and evolve. Everybody's nodding? Yeah? Awesome. Except for Livia. She doesn't know. Yeah. Don't spill your coffee. You may. Exactly. All right. So what they tell us, right, is at birth, human beings possess the level of insight that they acquired previously. They're no more or less advanced, which we just talked about. We don't suddenly get perfect and evolve to a pure spirit when this death comes to this physical body. We don't come back as a dog or a cat, or we don't come back as a less developed person when we evolve, right? When we move on to the next life. We're exactly in the same place that we were, right? When we ended, right? We re-educate, we suffer a little bit, we get better, we get healthier. By the grace of God, we come back in a new body, same soul, with thankfully no memory of the past, right? I have a situation in my social circle currently with a person that is being bothered just a little bit by a previous situation in a previous life, right? And thankfully for mediums and prayer, they're getting through this, right? But thankfully, this person has no memory of what their contribution may have been to this torment, yeah? And thankfully, none of us have memory of some of those mistakes we made previously. But we're here in the situation that we're in today by design. It's not random, right? I created my reality today based on not what I just did this morning and yesterday or 10 years ago, but 10 lifetimes ago, 20 lifetimes ago, right? Peter's in my life for a reason. You guys are in my life for a reason, right? I can't grow in the tone without you guys pushing me a little bit and assisting me, right? We're here for each other. And that's the beauty of it. We have no memory, yet we know we're on a mission. And nothing changes in that intermediary period, right? I die today, I heal, I recover. When God and my mentors grant me permission, right, and I'm ready, I come back. And whether I was down at the very bottom or maybe the third one up, maybe I'm at the third one by now, right? That's where I come back next time. And I stay there until I evolve, slowly, quickly, all depending on my choice and my action. Simple enough? It's not simple. It's hard, man.
It's simple to rationalize, not to
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, so take a look at that picture for a minute. And I want you to imagine there's 1,000 people, right, that you can see. Well, you can't see them just yet, right? Their history is unknown to you, but they're from newborns up to 80-year-olds, right? And you don't know anything about their history, but all you see is diversity, right? And use this with this idea of reincarnation or not believing in reincarnation. If you don't know their history and all you know is they're different in a one life situation, there's really, you just don't have all the data, but you open your eyes and then you have all of the history. And when you see all of this, it's easy to put into perspective why there's so many differences among people, is the point that they're trying to make in these pages. On the surface, right, it's easy to see different color, different age. Some people have more wrinkles, less wrinkles, glasses, no glasses, right? And if you looked at that in a one life perspective, we could attribute it strictly to physical changes or physical differences. But when you all of a sudden you're told, hey, no, this person's been for 80 years, this person's been 2 years, it's easy to understand why there's so much difference in that group of people. And the same thing goes with the many lives that we've lived and why it explains why we're all in different places. Right? Their past is hidden from you. Imagine them to all be born on the same day, right? You'd naturally wonder how some of them are big and some are small, and some are wrinkled, others have smooth skin. But then all of a sudden, it's revealed to you that you've discovered some that live longer than others. And it all puts it into perspective. And the same holds true for the idea with reincarnation. So God, they say, in his justice, could not create souls either more or less perfect, right? It's unfathomable to us. We could be wrong, but I don't think we are, right? God's love is equal and unbiased, right? So there's no way that he'd create us unequally. So our multiple lives explains the difference in the qualities that we see, right? With our eyes as we experience other people, with our emotions as we interact with other people. It totally, it's consistent, right, with this strict equality that we attribute to God, because everything has roots not in today, but in the past, right? All of us are where we are because of our past. And we all started with a very simple and lacking of knowledge as our starting point, just like we were created, right? For the purposes of evolving and growing at our own pace. So what about the future, right? We talked about the 6 questions that we'd have to ask if we didn't believe in reincarnation, right? If we only had one life. But what about the same idea, the same thing, reincarnation or no reincarnation in the future? Well, there's 5 questions for this, I believe, right? Question number 1, he says, if our future destiny is to be decided solely by our present life, what will be the respective positions of the savage and civilized person in the future? Will they be on the same level, or will there be a difference in their level of eternal happiness? Great question, right? So if I am in a savage situation where I'm not, I don't like that word savage, you know? And I was just telling them before, what's that? Primitive. I like primitive. And let's say I wasn't exposed to opportunities, right? I wasn't exposed to the gospel, for example, right? I lived someplace where the gospel wasn't available, right? And, you know, then my life here right now, in this life, right? The point is, how do you weigh that? In those two different peoples, in those two different cultures, that two people died at the same time, right? If we didn't have reincarnation, what happens, right? This person lived this life with no exposure. This person lived with all kinds of exposure to these things. The question is, what happens, right? How do you explain that? Question 2, they ask, will the individuals who have tirelessly worked their entire life to achieve moral and intellectual improvements be placed at the same rank as others who have remained at a lower point of moral and intellectual improvement? Not because they chose necessarily, but maybe they were never exposed, right? Like in the last question, right? Not through their own fault, but because they had neither time nor the opportunity to advance. What happens in that situation? How do you answer that question without reincarnation, right? Question 3, can the individuals who have done wrong because the path to enlightenment has been closed off to them be fairly punished for their wrongdoing, even though there is not the result of a voluntary choice? Think about that. Think about the people that aren't given the opportunity because of geography, perhaps, or because of family, or think about the people that don't make it to their 80s, right? They die in their teens. They die before they're 10, right? What happens, right? What happens to them on this eternal pathway? Question 4, right? Says, we strive to enlighten, moralize, and civilize all the humans. But for each individual that we were able to successfully educate, there are millions who die every year without ever seeing the light. So, written, again, remember, this was channeled by spirits, and they're sharing this story. Look, these advanced spirits, right? For centuries, right? They're saying, we try, right? We enlighten, we lift up, we encourage, we try to connect, right? But for everyone we help, there's many, many more that never see the light. What's their fate? Should they be treated as sinners? Right? If not, how have they deserved the same treatment as those who have become enlightened and moralized? And this really ties in. If you think about traditional religion, is probably the wrong way to say, but I just remember my childhood. There was no black and white, right? You either went to hell or you went to heaven. Right? And one of the questions I can remember asking myself early as a young teen, right, in catechism, right, in Sunday school, like what happens to those kids that die young, right? Do they go to heaven? The baby that didn't even learn to walk or talk, you're telling me they're going to go to hell because they didn't get baptized, or because they didn't accept some belief, right? It didn't make any sense to me, and that's what this talks to, right? Why should they be punished, right? Why would God, this loving God, why would there be anything other than love for them, right? And that's one of the questions they're asking here. Question 5, what is the fate of children who die before they have been able to do either good or bad? We've asked that, right? If they are welcomed among the purest spirits, why have they been given this standing without having done anything to deserve it? Why are they exempted from suffering the tribulations of the physical life? That's another way to look at that last question. Like, maybe we should be mad at them. They got off easy. They didn't have to deal with this for decades, right? But again, if we go back to your reading and the enthusiasm I talked about, all this suffering really isn't suffering, right? It's opportunity. So you could look at that on either side of the coin, I guess. But that's the 5th question that they talk about. We have to ask. So if we look at this as opposed to, well, with only one life, how do we explain this, right? If we talk about consecutive lives, it explains that what we can't complete in this life, we will complete in another life. Now, does that give you carte blanche to just say, screw it? I'm not going to worry about this life. I'll do it again next time. Well, I've thought of that. And I've actually taken that route from time to time, and it doesn't make it any easier, right? Just slows it down, right? And think about, is there any guarantee that I died today and I'm coming back in a week? Am I coming back next year? You guys, how many of you flipped open Heaven and Hell on the bookshelf there and read some of those stories? There's spirits in there that talk about being in this lower region, this umbra or this coma-like state for centuries. Centuries. And not necessarily in the best state, right? So, I don't know about you guys, but don't get me wrong, I make mistakes every day. but they hurt more when I make them. I'm more conscious when I don't make the best choice. And then if I really get crazy with it, because I can get in my head sometimes, and I can go back 20 years and think about some of the stuff I used to do back then. Actually, I can't. I gotta say longer now because I'm getting older. It's more like 35 years ago, right? 20 years ago, I was doing pretty good. I was doing better, you know. Yeah. Age has its privilege, I guess. So don't beat yourself up. Don't go too far back. But I think the more we study, the more we attend stuff like this and get involved, it hurts more, or you're more aware when you drop the ball. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure I'm not alone. If if I can get it done now, I want to get it done now because I don't want to be one of those spirits in heaven and hell. 300 years, 500 years, telling these stories that what they wish they could have done differently. We know, right? Our our conscience is here, right? And we know right from wrong, right? And we know the better choice. So I spend my days trying to make the right choice, and I'm sure you guys do too. But what they're telling us here, right, is we're rewarded progressively, right? And just because you messed up yesterday, right, doesn't mean today has to be. You have to throw it to the wind and the heck with it. It's like, I don't know about you guys, but January 1st was here recently, right? How many of you made some resolutions? Some of you maybe, right? Well, I don't make them anymore and I mean, it just doesn't seem to work. I don't make them on New Year's, but now I make these goals every day where I want to live to improve and make things better. And I think if we can look at this not as a New Year's resolution, but as a long-term play, right? It just makes it easier. Don't beat yourself up for a bad day, like on a diet or you didn't exercise, but whatever it is we're working on. Just think of it as, look, who knows when this life is going to end? But I got every breath I take, right? Every second, I have the opportunity to choose good or bad, and I just try to make good choices as much as I can, and don't beat myself up too much when I don't. Because according to my merit, your merit, right? No one's excluded from the ultimate attainment of happiness, right? Regardless of the obstacles they must overcome on this journey. Did you hear that? No one is excluded from ultimate attainment of happiness. Does it feel like that every day sometimes? Or do you feel like you're just getting kicked in the teeth, right? COVID, no job, can't pay the bills. What? My mother-in-law's coming? No, I'm just kidding. I have a great mother-in-law. I have a great mother-in-law. I do. I swear. If you're watching, I swear. I'm kidding. She makes the best pudding, right? Flan. Oh my goodness. The point is, when we talk about destiny, when we talk about free will, when we talk about multiple lives, what's the one guarantee that we know? Destiny is real, right? We all have a destiny. Do you remember what it is? What are we guaranteed of? Besides death and taxes, right? What are we guaranteed of? All right? We're going to evolve, right? Was Christ created pure? All right. He evolved into the purest spirit that ever walked the earth. He came. He shared the example. He showed us how to live. And now we got 100 books on those shelves. We got thousands of internet examples of things we can read. We have fraternal counseling on Wednesday night. We have classes. I think we started classes on Tuesday again, or we will at some point, right? Yeah. Livia will give you her cell phone number, right? If you want to talk, right? My point is, we're surrounded with positive examples. We're surrounded with support. We're surrounded with help. We are not alone. And even though we may feel alone and be suffering, we're not. We have help, right? And we not just help, we have the promise, the guarantee of perfection, Christ-like perfection. You guys and me, we're all going to be pure one day. And we're going to get there by helping each other right now. by being there for each other, right? By constantly just trying to do a little bit better today than we did yesterday. Right? And Peter, to this day, thank you for a lecture you did years ago. When I put my head on the pillow at night, I replay the day. Right? When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is thank God for a new day. And I just start rattling off what I'm grateful for. And I've been doing that for years, and it's helping me so much. So thank you for that tip. All right? What's that? Exactly, right? Oh, I thought that was yours. You stole that from somebody?
No, I gave the credit. The morning is mine. The night is San Agustin.
All right. Just 20 more minutes, okay? Can you put up? I'm just kidding. I got 30 more seconds. All right? It's not that long. And I told you I wasn't going to touch your hearts today, but maybe I did. But I told you this was definitely going to be rational, right? And it is, right? If we just look at this strictly as a rational conversation, what makes more sense? Reincarnation is not contrary to religion. We talked about that the first 2 minutes, right? This goes back to the beginning of written history, right? Reincarnation has been talked about, even been erased or eradicated from some mainstream stuff. There's evidence that it was believed, but now it's not, right? The Spirit's teaching, right, are predominantly Christian, founded on the concepts of the immortality of the soul, right? Future rewards and atonements, God's justice, free will, and Christ's moral code, like we just shared briefly a few minutes ago. There's nothing unchristlike about reincarnation. There's nothing unchristlike about Spiritism. It's all founded on His good news and His life, right? And finally, right, the theory of multiple lives, if nothing else, right, is comforting. It comforts me to know that I get to make up for mistakes that I don't even remember making, but I get to make up for them. It's comforting to know that wherever I mess up this life, I'm going to get the opportunity. Hopefully not after 400 or 500 years, right? I don't want to be like that, but hopefully at some point I get to make up for it, right? And it definitely complies with the concept of fair justice perfectly, right? And this is my favorite line, right? It's the life preserver that God throws humanity. It's not just about one life, and you're born into the lot that you're born into, and you got to dog eat dog and succeed off the backs of others, or win or lose, right? It's just you're in this to evolve one life at a time, one soul at a time, and the more we work with others, the more we help each other, the better it is for all of us. So my sincere thanks to you for contributing to my involvement. My sincere thanks to Livia for asking me to prepare this topic. Every time I prepare one of these talks, I grow a little bit, and I appreciate that, so thank you. And thank you to you for listening. May you leave here tonight with serenity, with peace, and enthusiasm about any challenges that you're going to face, knowing that they're there for you to grow. So thank you so much.